After every mass shooting, we hear about thoughts and prayers. Evergreen is now past that and ready for action. Today, survivors of the school shooting and community members gathered alongside lawmakers who have an idea. It's likely to be controversial. Our Mark Salinger has that.
Every time this happens, we give our thoughts and prayers, but not a lot of policy.
Change doesn't happen overnight.
I heard a series of loud noises from the stairwell.
But for the students and teachers who survived the shooting at Evergreen High School, change is worth fighting for.
And I thought, if someone comes in that door, this desk isn't going to stop any bullets.
I still sit with friends into the late hours of the night who fear sleep because when they close their eyes, the nightmares return.
5 months after the school was overrun by SWAT teams and ambulances, today it was filled with lawmakers and new promises.
This legislation could have prevented the devastating event on September 10th.
Democratic Congresswoman Brittany Pedersen and Democratic State Representative Tammy Story say the shooting shouldn't have ever happened.
This bill does not ask companies to remove posts or shut down websites. It simply demands that when a specific imminent threat is identified, the information moves fast enough to save lives.
75 days before the shooting here, a tip about the shooter was sent by the Anti-Defamation League to the FBI in New York. It raised alarms about online posts from the shooter threatening harm. The FBI filed 3 search warrants obtaining the IP address, URL, and eventually home address of the shooter. The information reached Jeffco Sheriff Reggie Marinelli 2 days after Desmond Hawley already shot 2 classmates and took his own life.
Because of the time it took to get those search warrants back, the shooting had already occurred.
Lawmakers say they now want faster responses from social media companies to warrants regarding potential threats. Lawmakers say a proposed Colorado law that is yet to be introduced would require information within 24 hours. They say the federal legislation would include a deadline of 72 hours.
Based on what we learned from Evergreen, we believe faster access to digital evidence could help stop future attacks.
Investigators in New York knew about the student in Evergreen months before he became the shooter. No one here knew anything about the harm he was planning to cause.
I found myself wondering what could we have done different. And while there's many pieces to that puzzle, here's an answer.
The legislation, of course, raises potential concerns over internet privacy, bypassing courts and government power. The sheriff says it's about preventing tragedy. Pedersen today said that social media companies know this stuff is happening and are taking action because they fear liability, Kyle.
You understand just how frustrating it is for these families that feel like at least they should get answers, and they feel like those might be totally out of reach.
Yeah, we were also wondering, are there any more answers to come in the investigation that was put out last week? That didn't really answer a lot of those questions. I asked the sheriff today, hey, did the parents know anything? If the FBI got a tip in New York, did the parents here in Colorado know anything about their son? She says they don't believe at this time that they knew anything, and they aren't facing charges.
Mark Salinger, thank you. ICE is making more daily arrests under President Donald Trump's second term than at any point in the last 10 years. Trump, of course, promised to deport the worst of the worst. But the pressure on his deportation forces is to just rack up pure numbers. Researchers tell our Angeline McCall that means arresting a lot of people without any criminal history.
President Trump has delivered on at least one of his promises, launching the largest deportation plan in American history.
Following the second Trump inauguration, ICE daily arrests increased by 170% at the national level.
University of Colorado assistant professor Chloe says her latest research shows that deportation plan promise came at the expense of another Trump promise, targeting the, quote, worst of the worst.
And so as ICE increases its activity, its ability to target people with a criminal conviction is falling.
East says ICE arrests of people with criminal convictions have fallen to about 30%. Compare that to Trump's first term, where we saw about 80% of people arrested with a criminal record early on in his administration.
It is also just the reality when you scale up the number of people who are arrested, there's only so many people to arrest that have a criminal conviction.
The data shows a shift, and so do the tactics. East says Democratic-run cities like Minneapolis and Portland have seen more sweeping, indiscriminate community arrests rather than targeting those with criminal convictions. Here in Colorado, East's study found a 200% increase in the number of people arrested daily, a stark rise from the 30% increase during Trump's first term.
And so even though Denver and Colorado has not yet received the kind of focus that other cities like Minneapolis has received, we still have seen a really unprecedented increase in ICE activity just in the first 10 months of the administration.
CBS Today reported that the number of people being arrested without a criminal conviction is even lower at 14% based on an internal memo from DHS. And even further, less than 2% of those arrested by ICE over the past year had serious violent crimes like rape, homicide, or sexual assault. Kyle.
And certainly, I think we tend to think when somebody's charged with a crime, it's like, well, then the next step in the process is for them to either prove their innocence or for the government to prove their guilt, but not necessarily if the person also has an immigration status that could lend them to deportation.
Right. When we talk about convictions, right, those are people who've gone through the process. There's been a real push and pull with the immigration system and the judicial system. And we've seen many people who have been streamlined through the deportation process or removal process because they've been picked up on charges and they haven't yet had the opportunity. But that really doesn't matter to immigration at the end of the day. Once they're picked up and known to immigration, they'll go ahead and do that. Of course, that's frustrating, right, to not only those families, but also immigration advocates who say that they should have their day in court because, you know, ultimately, if this is why you're going to arrest them, then, you know, you should wait for it to play out.
Folks are going to have a variety of views on how the system works, but it is important for folks to know, in fact, how it is indeed functioning. Angeline McCall, thank you. President Trump is calling on his administration to approve the acquisition of 9 News' parent company, Tegna, by Fox 31's parent company, Nexstar. Trump says that rolling Tegna into Nexstar, quote, will help knock out the fake news. Writing in all caps, get that deal done. Within hours, FCC Chairman Brendan Carr, a Trump ally whose agency is reviewing the deal, endorsed the acquisition. Trump's social media post Saturday laid out plainly why he wants this deal done, writing, quote, we need more competition against the enemy, the fake news national TV networks. As Nexstar has sought the Trump administration's approval for the deal, it's labeled itself the quote-unquote anti-fake news. Colorado's Democratic Senator Michael Bennet and Democratic Representative Joe Neguse responded to Trump's statement, writing, quote, by designating news outlets he dislikes as the enemy, Trump has continued his baseless attacks on reporters who devote their careers to investigating those in power and holding them to account. Nexstar has said that multiple TV stations in the same market after this deal will be combined. One of the joys of sharing this program with you is how when we see a problem, we don't just watch like, oh boy, that's sad. All right, next news item. No, we can get to work. We can do something about it through collective action. When we heard about blue-collar families struggling to make it through this low snow winter in the high country, thinking about moving out, put together a Word of Thanks microgiving campaign. Then you kicked in nearly $15,000 in one-time donations to the Summit Resource Center and its food bank up there, providing families with groceries. Your recurring monthly donations to the Word of Thanks Fund are expected to add another almost $50,000 on top of that. That's not symbolism, that's not feel-good, that is real, tangible impact that you are making in the lives of our neighbors in Summit County. We're a few weeks out from the 300th straight week of your microgiving, as you have now raised $17 million and counting for nonprofits across Colorado. So tell me about the nonprofits who are helping people in your corner of the state. Email next@9news.com or text next to 303-871-1491.
Our customers want Starbucks, and they're willing to pay the prices.
When you're stuck at the airport, that coffee, or just about anything, is going to cost you more. State legislators are talking about doing something about so-called captive consumers. Temperatures are higher, but frankly, the stakes are a lot lower. Some young Olympic hopefuls in Denver get in some runs on the only patch of snow in town. Next. When you see a price tag at the airport, you're probably going to wince a little bit if you have not properly clenched in anticipation of getting gouged. Our Steve Steger looked into DIA's current pricing policy and an effort at the state legislature to hold businesses accountable for charging you a whole bunch when you're trapped.
$10 more for a phone cable, double the price for a bag of pretzels.
Thank you.
And a cup of coffee marked up 54% from the Starbucks down the road. Makes you think anything goes at DIA, but that's not true.
Our policy states that all concessionaires have to have pricing set at no more than 15% above street pricing.
We tracked 80 items and found nearly 3/4 of them were selling for more than 15% over the prices we found on the outside. DIA told us most of the prices we tracked were approved and compliant with their 15% policy because the vendors get to pick their price comparisons.
This is one of the places where I think we are just used to being gouged over and over again.
Alex Jaquez is with Groundwork Collaborative, a progressive advocacy group pushing for adherence to street pricing at airports.
Where we take umbrage is places like stadiums, concert venues, airports that are constructed with public money where we're not getting any public return.
He looked at our numbers.
I was pretty shocked by the spreadsheet, particularly the number of columns that had triple digits in front of them.
Like Starbucks, where the menu was marked up by 30 to 50% compared to off-airport prices. We found Starbucks doesn't even attempt to follow the airport's policy and compare to a street price. They just offer a corporate price list for all of their airport locations across the country. And DIA is cool with that.
We, along with all the other airports in America, have approved this. Why? Because our customers want Starbucks and they're willing to pay the prices.
There is a financial incentive for the airport, too.
We would make less money from the 10 million cups of coffee sold.
So it would hurt you?
Financially.
Financially, to force them to come into compliance with the street pricing rule?
It would hurt us, but again, we care more about the guests than we do dollars, but it is our job to make money.
There's kind of a fundamental conflict of interest here. That's why we have encouraged more state consumer protection agencies and competition agencies to get more involved in these issues.
That is happening at the state legislature.
This bill is saying that you cannot, in those settings, charge an excessive price.
Democratic State Representative Yara Zokai introduced a bill that would ban businesses from charging more inside a so-called captive setting, the airport, a stadium, or even a hospital or prison.
How do you even begin to police that?
So the enforcement mechanism for this bill is with the Attorney General's office. And so this is giving them the authority to say these prices are excessive. Those corporations can come back and explain why they haven't, but it is giving our AG's office that empowerment to go after price gouging.
She says it's already getting pushback. But Jaquez says getting customers' attention to this helps.
The most effective way to change behavior at some of these locations is for citizens to be aware of.
So the airport's argument here is simple. The businesses there have higher costs, like higher rent, labor, and logistics costs. So they allow them to compare prices with businesses with higher prices, or in Starbucks' case, just not compare them to Denver at all. We've got our full list of findings in this long article on 9news.com. It's tough sometimes to find things on 9news.com. So if you text the words airport prices to 303-871-1491, we'll send you the article. It has all of the 80 plus items we looked at, all the comparisons that we used. You can see our methodology and how we figured this out. It's going to be an interesting discussion at the legislature.
I'm curious how other airports deal with this, because I wonder if there isn't some middle ground between government price setting, right? The AG decides what everything costs in Colorado, and then this system at DIA where they're basically just like, well, how much do you want to ring them out for?
But there are different philosophies, right? You've got the airport in Portland that says strict street pricing. Everything in here must match the street price. They audit it every year. They say they see revenue increase because people buy more things because they feel more comfortable. Then you have airports like Phoenix who just said, you know what, get rid of any street pricing policy that we have. They say they've had success there. I'd be interested to double check those numbers, but
until then, $40 phone chargers for all of us.
Yes.
All right, Steve Steger, thank you. Let's turn to meteorologist Chris Bianchi. And you know, when it's cold in the winter, you'll hear people say, what about that climate change? But it's been hot, so what do we make of it?
Exactly, and that is what I want to get into here, Kyle, is be careful, basically attributing day-to-day weather to climate change. So, no doubt, It was cooking today, 71 degrees. That is our average high in Denver on May 16th. But when we talk about what is actually causing why it was 71 degrees today, it was not caused by climate change. And that distinction matters because of what Kyle just said a second ago. That's exactly what climate change deniers say, is when it's snowing outside, they go, what climate change? So what's causing it is a classic La Nina weather pattern. High pressure across the west, extra wavy weather pattern. And yes, at the margins, we can see the impact of a warming climate. For example, we've seen a slight increase in 60-degree days in the winter. We've had obviously a lot more this season, and we're 2.3 degrees warmer statewide since 1980. So the climate is warming. It is a major threat, but it is also not something that you look at on a day-to-day basis. So the fact that it was 70 degrees today, that is not caused by a warming climate. It is, again, at the margins where you see that. Next few days, though, temperatures in the 50s, slight cool down later this week.
Sunny and 70 degrees in Denver, so you know what that means. Grab your snowboard, let's go. It's been a heartbreaking weekend for our Olympic underdogs from Andorra. But that tiny team is just getting started at this year's games. 70-degree weather and snowboarding. It's the new winter in Colorado. Today we caught up with a few Coloradans with Olympic dreams and a small little patch of snow at Ruby Hill.
It's very rare in February you can get a sunny snow day, especially when you're on snow. I'm Jonah Blass and I'm 12 years old. Today I'm just here progressing as much as I can. I was working on a bunch of new tricks. Pretty nice day, especially in a t-shirt. Very risky in the sense if I fall, I'm gonna get snow all over myself. This year it's probably more probable with how much we have no snow, but I'm happy I can.
Crazy, because there's snow on the ground and it's 60, 70 degrees. I'm Kona Arsberger and I'm 10 years old. Feels weird. We were gonna go to the mountains, but it's 15 minutes away, so we just came here. It's just fun, and I'm learning how to connect turns and stuff, and I just hit my first jump. It was fun. I thought it would be more hard, but actually it's pretty easy.
I would love to snowboard in the Olympics one day. My family's huge on the Olympics. My mom's gotten up at 2:30 for the last, I think, 3 days to watch alpine skiing. It's nice to see people that I can look up to and try to be like when I grow up.
Having fun, hitting tricks, and going really fast.
Landing things in a t-shirt is something I never thought I'd be able to do.
65 with snow?
Yeah.
Not complaining. And a jump, yeah.
It gets really fun once you actually start learning how to do stuff.
Just having it be open and nothing really caring about, it's awesome.
It was the women's downhill crash that caused the world to gasp this weekend. She went over that hill, caught some air, came down awkwardly, and just went flying. Devastating crash that ended her Olympic dream in Italy, generating nonstop headlines on both sides of the Atlantic. Actually, no, this crash was barely noticed because it was the Andorran athlete who crashed right after Lindsey Vonn on the same course. 25-year-old Andorran alpine skier Candy Moreno also had to be airlifted off the women's downhill course. Moreno says she tore her ACL and MCL in her left knee, tore a ligament in her right thumb, but she did say afterwards she's looking ahead to her next Winter Games. Quick look at the medal leaderboard. Italy leads with 9, U.S. has 2, Andorra, our underdog favorite, still tied for last place, 0 medals so far. But this could be the year that this absolute banger of a national anthem, El Gran Carlimán, is played when an Andorran wins their country's first ever Olympic medal. We're back with your feedback next. Finished with your feedback, Rico on X writes, "You're a real loser, Kyle." That's what he said. I assume that's what he means. He wrote looser. Hey, Olympic Zone is on next. Your favorite coverage of Team USA. Maybe they'll even throw in a little shout to Andorra.